Everybody, I am so excited to have Miss Angie Amico here today with Life Changing Solutions. She's had a life changing, many life changing experiences. I wanted to have her today because she was homeless for a year with a child at the time, and now she's transformed her life into something amazing. She went on to get her bachelor's degree, and she's also went on to get her master's degree. And I'm going to let Angie tell you a little bit about her degree and what she's doing. And I can't wait to hear your story, Angie. And I know the audience will love to hear your story. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Well, in terms of my story, actually, it goes back a little bit further than that. And thank you for allowing me to say this because I don't.
You're welcome.
It's one of the few times that I've actually shared this out loud. And after we met, I started thinking, my journey really began when my mother got sick when I was 15 years old. And I actually took care of her to the point where, she died in my arms. And a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, in the moment it sucked. It wasn't the greatest of experiences. But I learned then that my purpose was to help others. There was just such a honor in being there with my mom and being able to support her and take care of her. And so that led me into seeking, different ways to support others. And this happened in Texas, and I moved here to Vegas. I get here and I did lose my way. I made some pretty bad choices, which led me to be homeless with my son. And at the time my sister and my dad are the ones that kicked me out, and I was such a victim to this.
That is so important. That really struck me in our conversation about when you lost your mom. The thing that really struck me more than anything out of the whole conversation, besides your giving, was how you could have been, oh, poor me, I lost my mom, I was so young, but you turned it around and did something amazing.
Yes, and so it's like I live, you know what I mean? So I'm in the streets for about 6 months, and this whole time, and it was such an experience for me, because now I'm on the streets, I have a kid, and I was being such a victim, blaming everybody. How dare my family let me be here, and all this other stuff. And just things got worse for me. When I thought I had hit rock bottom, I discovered there's
more to a rock bottom. Yeah.
And finally I had that aha moment and awakening. And it's like, you know what? I'm not a victim. And I took responsibility for the choices that I made that led my sister and my dad and everybody else to shut the door on me. And that's when I started to rise and grow. And so, and even now, I have a great relationship with my family, and I appreciate them. And it's such a hard thing for them now to talk about, because I'm like, honestly, that was the best thing that they loved me enough to say enough.
Yeah, that's so true and crucial, because there's so many people out there right now that their kid or someone they love, and they got to do that tough love, and it's hard. So I got to admire a family.
Oh yeah. And I
could imagine.
And it was hard for them. It was hard for me. But again, it was the best thing, because that's where I discovered what I was made of. And what I had. And that's also when and I get teary-eyed every time I say it. I remember looking at my son, and I'm like, you know what? I promise you, this will never happen again. This is not us. This is not, I'm so sorry. And hopefully you will never remember this, because he was just a baby. And sure enough, I started, I got a job and worked my way up in that job. And when I was at one of my places at work, somebody pulled me aside and she's like, you know what, you have some great ideas. I love your passion, your potential. But unfortunately, and this is when I was working in social services, it's like not very many people are going to listen to you unless you have an alphabet behind your name.
Credibility.
Mm-hmm.
Credibility.
Yes.
It's important.
It really was. And so I even at that point, I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, you're telling me I have great ideas, and I know this, and I'm working with them, and I'm here in the trenches. And she's like, I'm sorry, that's just how it is. And you have a choice. You can keep this, where you're at, or you can break through and go get an education and do it. And so what's really cute is that my son and I actually started school the same day.
Oh,
nice.
We
started kindergarten, and I started when my bachelor's. And we would do our homework on the kitchen table and stuff like that. And then later, after I finished my bachelor's, I, went on to get my master's in mental health counseling.
Oh, very nice. So how do you use your degree in mental health counseling. So she is part of the coach, a coach here in Las Vegas, but she has the credibility to back it up. When I met her, I was like, because you taught mental health, you're way ahead of the game. So how do you use your degree in mental health to help coach your clients to guide them to where they want to be?
Well, first of all, let me make a distinction between the two, because I've been asked that a lot. Like in counseling for me, it's the comfort. What I mean by that is I'll have a client come to me.
Hand holding.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's also, they come to me so that I can fix them as if they're broken.
Mm-hmm.
And not discrediting, I believe that there's definitely a place for counseling and mental health services, but I really believe that most of us just need that little extra push, which is where the coaching comes in. And the come from, for me, it's like, nope, there's nothing wrong with you. I'm here. And even the word coaching, I actually stay away from. I refer to myself more as an architect.
I love that.
A relationship architect, because for me, the relationship that we're going to have is we're going to be partners, and we're going to do this together, and there's nothing wrong with you. We're just going to elevate you where you're at. We're going to tweak some things that are not working in your life, and then just, move up from there.
Yeah, I do. I suffer from anxiety. So, but I know I don't know. No, I guess they call it a mental illness. I don't really know the terms now. It's more being spoke of more now. But I also know that sometimes I just need that little push to get going or to snap out of that. So I can see where that can relate in a lot of ways to that. Because sometimes we just need that extra push. Even with being an entrepreneur, people don't realize, like, we all have bad days and we all have those moments. But it's when I see the post from Angie, or if I see the post from another friend of mine, that it's just, it get that positive energy. And just like that, I snap out of it. So, we all need to have a little accountability sometimes, as well. So Angie is doing this amazing event here in Las Vegas coming up. And she had me from the word go on what it is about. So why don't you explain to them what you're doing? It's going to be a downtown event. And tell them what exactly this workshop is about. And then we will also post the link in after this is done for anybody to join her coaching class. So tell us a little bit about when is it, where is it at, what's involved. And so tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, the workshop itself, it's called Design Your Purpose. It's June 22nd and 23rd. It's at the Meet, downtown Las Vegas on 4th Street. And, there's going to be some light refreshments, some lunch, free parking. That's a big score, especially
free parking,
right? Especially downtown. And that's all included in the price. And what you will get out of that is what I'm referring to as a blueprint. Again, playing on the whole architect thing. As I mentioned, I discovered my purpose very early on in terms of I'm here to support and empower others. I didn't really hone in on how I was going to do that until much later, but I've noticed that in the last 20 years, that's what I've been doing, navigating through different ways of supporting and helping others. And that is my purpose. And I live out of that. And I think that you're finding your purpose goes deeper than your why.
Yeah, we talked about that because the why can change.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Your why can change. Sometimes the why is an external reason. Like for instance, in my journey, it was my children because now I have 3. So it's like I kept pushing through and I kept making sure that, I was never going to be homeless again. And that was my why. And that was what would keep me motivated. And now it's like, luckily I've reached a point where I'm stable and I'm not worried about that anymore. But I still want to help people. So my purpose didn't change. And now it just allows me to expand even further.
Sure.
And so that's what the workshop is about, is supporting you to find what your purpose is. And also I believe that a lot of us, and just in my experience of being with people, a lot of us hold on to a lot of blame, shame, and guilt.
Forgiving yourself is so key.
Yes.
So key.
And because we're doing what we want to do, we're living out of our purpose, sometimes we feel a little guilty or, selfish or what have you. So we also go into that. It's just about really accepting yourself and taking personal responsibility for the choices that you make. And when you're in that space, there's nothing to feel guilty about.
You know, and taking responsibility is key, I think. Because if you take responsibility, that is the first stone to moving on to the next step. You know, and when we were talking last week, I was explaining to Angie that this workshop, I think, is really designed for somebody around, particularly females, men too, absolutely men too. But I have found, and as I've gone through time and as being an entrepreneur myself, around that 45-year-old mark is when the women are like, your kids are growing up, they're graduated from college, they could be graduating from college, they graduated from high school, most of them by then. So then you're like, you know, because my own story with, you know, being a teacher get my degree till I was 38. So, but it wasn't what I wanted. So about 45 is when I took the bull by the horns and said, for once in my life, I am going to do something for me. Because even when the girls were little, like I would like go to the Verge to go shopping for me. But what always happened, it was always about them. So now as time's kind of going on, it's more to, you know, it's more about, I need to do something for me, because we always hear all the time, keep your cup full and put the oxygen mask on first. And it's so true. So I think that anybody who's out there, Kelly Dossel, this, your name just popped in my mind just now. This might be a good workshop for you. Because just trying to find your way, and she's one of my friends who's just still trying to navigate her way through. So that just dawned on me. I'll make sure I tag her. But this would be a good workshop for you if you were like in that position at your job where you maybe want to find something new. You're still not sure. You're afraid to jump because jumping is so scary. It's one of the scariest things an entrepreneur can do. Resistance is horrible. So Miss Angie here will help you gain the practical tools to get you going, to decide what you want to do, what is your destiny, what will make you happy. So what is a practical tool? What would be a practical tool?
Well, actually, something that came up, and even what you were speaking, there's a piece within the workshop that I discuss that I call them distinctions. So the distinction between acceptance and resignation. And there's a difference, and there's a whole dialogue around that. So, but there's also practical tools. So something for you to even hone in on and discover, okay, am I, you know, because even when we speak acceptance, it sounds like resignation or vice versa. So it's really about you connecting with yourself and honing in on, does it feel good? You know, so acceptance, in the way that I put it, it's just like I have no way to really explain it other than, you know, telling you what it is. It's like, acceptance feels like a warm, fuzzy sweater on a cold day. You know, it just feels good. It feels right that I'm saying, hey, you know what? I've accepted the situation, no matter how it's perceived, good, bad, or indifferent. It's like, you know what? This is what is. And that empowers you to move forward. It empowers you to be able to say, okay, this is how it is. Let me see, you know, where I can go. Whereas resignation, I call that, it's like sandpaper pants. Even when you're saying like, okay, this is how it is, but it's like, oh yeah, this is just how it is. And you're kind of being a victim to it, and it just doesn't feel good. And you're stuck in this loop.
Complacency.
Yes.
Yes, I so agree with that. Yes.
And so what we do is that we have, I'll give you some tools to be able to like first figure that out, because I feel that through awareness comes change. You know, there's nothing you can do if you're not aware of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so first catching it, and then what's next? What's the next step? Okay, I've caught it. What can I do about it? Is there anything that can be done? And that's where we work together, you know, and as I mentioned, I refer to myself as a relationship architect, because relationship is not just, you know, romantic or friends. It really is your ability to relate, but it's even your relationship with risk.
Or yourself.
Yes.
That's what came to my mind, was relationship with yourself. If you're not, you have to accept certain things. And at the end of the day, keep the naysayers out. And really, I think it goes with aligning with your core and like your core values and those feelings we get. You know, trust those little pangs and pings that you get sometimes.
Yes.
And forgive yourself, because it's funny how those things are we're given that tool for a reason. That's a practical tool.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. It's a practical tool, right? A practical tool is your gut instinct. And I like to go from the gut.
Yes.
You know, some people go from here, and I more and more go from the gut. Because as time has went on, whenever I ignore this, it is my worst enemy or my best friend. It depends on how you use it. It could be your worst enemy or your best friend. So when you ignore that, that's when it becomes your enemy, I think. But in a way, it could go either way. But I just recently was burned again by somebody that I just had that little pang, some little side here and there, but I ignored it. And you know what? There's one more person in my life right now that is being given it to me. And I told my husband in my backyard about 2 years ago, I said, you know, I really want to love so-and-so, but something is telling me, stay away, stay away, stay away. So now I'm going through that now. I'm trying to push this person out. It's really hard. It's really hard, but I know I know it's the right thing for me at the end of the day.
And something that I say is it's really important, you know, if I'm not okay, because that's something that happens and we start to beat ourselves up. Oh, it's selfish, blah, blah, blah. But no, honestly, if if I'm not okay, those around me are not going to be okay. Because I'm just going to be like grouchy and just, you know, and if I'm not feeling good. And yes, and as you said, it's like it's connecting, you know, that gut, what I call the intangible stuff, you know, and your mind, because you also need to use that. There's a harmony between the two and learning how to flow between both, you know, and something that I would actually do. And it just, as you were speaking, you're like, I really want to love this person. Well, just because you don't have them around you or you don't have them in your life does not mean that you don't love them.
Yeah.
You can love them from afar. An example that I give is like the lion. You know, you can go to the zoo and you can admire the lion from afar, right? And it's majestic and it's beautiful and you know, but I'm not going to put my head in the cage.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, and if I did and the lion bit my head off, really, who's responsible here?
Yeah.
You know, so it's just like, no, I admire and adore lions, but you're not going to catch me in that cage, and there's nothing wrong for that.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
so
makes
it's
perfect
creating
sense.
those boundaries as well, and it's like it doesn't mean that you stop loving them. It just means that they don't belong in your life for whatever reason. And I don't even want to say that they're toxic, because that's something too that no, they just simply don't belong.
Yeah, boundaries is so key. We were talking about this the other day, and that is so true. And the more one goes into self-growth, that's when they realize, because I've been setting the boundaries, and it is a tough thing to do, but just vibrate high and set those boundaries, and the others around you will flounder a little bit, but then they will readjust. It's all part of the plan, and it will make you feel so much better. And when you put those boundaries out, that's really, really important. I've learned that more recently than ever, how important that really is, because it's important for your own sanity. And then it's important to have those healthy relationships around you as well. So tell me about your relationship with you and your son today.
Oh, well, and as I mentioned, just kind of a sidebar in terms of boundaries, and I'll speak into my relationship with my son, but it's really important because a lot of us women with the children, we feel that's one that we tend to struggle with, is setting those boundaries with our own children, because it's like, oh, I'm a bad mom, you know. But again, if I'm not okay, then they're not going to be okay.
Yes. And
something that I used to do growing up, or not growing up, as I was raising my kids, especially like coming home from a long day of counseling and just supporting others and receiving people's problems all day long, I would come home. My kids generally would be home by the time I would get home, and they already knew. I would tell them, like, Mommy needs to go take work off.
There you go.
Right? And so they would know that I would go into my bedroom, and whatever I needed, whether it was 10, 15 minutes, sometimes I would just take a shower, sometimes I would, put my sweats on or whatever. But I would take the time that I needed for me and then come out, and I was mom.
Yeah, ready to go.
And ready to go. And I had shifted, and it was something that also visually the kids understood. Because they would see me in my work clothes, and then I would come home out of my, my PJs and my sweats or whatever. And so they would also understand that. And that led to a great relationship with my children, because now they are able to set boundaries with me, and I honor them, you know, and I will tell them, it's like, okay, as mom, I'm not gonna, like, this may be your boundary, but I will respect it until it creates a problem, or if it does. You know, my son's actually graduating this, yep, in a few weeks.
Wow.
And he and I love all three of my kids, because I have two sons and a daughter now, and we are able to have conversations, open, loving conversations where, you know, and speaking about the oldest, he has a girlfriend, and I always embarrass him when I tell him about this. One of the biggest conversations that we had wasn't necessarily about the birds and the bees. It was about the responsibility that he has as a man.
Yes. Yeah.
In this relationship. And if he chooses to go into a sexual relationship with her, what that means. And that he gets to be responsible, not just with her, but moving forward, and telling, you know, these women what his intentions are, and be willing to accept the no.
You know, I'm so glad you brought that up. You know, here we are, we're Gen X, and baby boomers raised us very differently, and as their parents did. But as time has went on, the conversations between my daughter and myself, I have a 25-year-old, are completely different than the conversations with my mom and the way they were. I would think I would have the same conversation. It's the birds and the bees, like, we all get that. But the conversation is more about reflect on what you're doing. Think about what you're saying. And it's really, really amazing. I think that the entrepreneur children, the ones that are going through self-growth, have a really good shot at life, honestly. Because we have some deep conversations, her and I do, where my mom never had those conversations with me. And it's not my mom's fault.
Right.
It was because it was the way they were raised. But now, as time is going on, we have to have them. And now I have a 10-year-old son, and I'm always having those conversations with him on the way to school. Just because so-and-so does something doesn't mean you do. You need to do what you need to think about what you're doing, how you're treating people. It's so important to reflect on all these things, that if you said something mean to somebody that day and it bothered you, then take responsibility and apologize for it, or whatever. Or how you know what they say, nobody will remember what you said, but they'll always remember how you made them feel.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's really, really key.
And that's where I speak into, and it's actually part of the workshop too, is your beingness. Who are you being in that moment?
Mm-hmm.
And how is that affecting others? It's creating that ripple, because we're constantly affecting others, whether we realize it or not. And the impact, the intensity, and really how we're affecting others, we can be responsible for that. And some people don't realize that. And in going back to, like, with my kids, something else too is that I'm always a student, and actually not just of my children, but of anybody.
Yes.
You know, and something that I learned from my son, especially because he would frustrate me, because again, the way I was brought up is more is better, right? Material things represented success.
Right.
Is how I was brought up. It's like, you got to have the big house, you got to have this, you got to have that. And he's working now, and there was actually some, discontention there between my ex, his dad, and I, because my son's like, well, I don't need to work as much. I think that our children are also learning the quality of life. It's finding that, harmony, and that it's not as important how much money you're making, but really how are you spending your time? And so for him, it's like, I can work 4 hours, go buy me a $5 t-shirt and be fine, versus working an entire week to go get me a designer shirt.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was a big aha moment for me, when I'm like, wait a minute, you're right. It's like, and it's not that you're not going to have a successful life. It's like, well, wait a minute. Like, what do you define as success? What is it that you're, and go and bring it back. What is your purpose? And for him, it's more important, he's still responsible. He's going to school. He's working. He has a girlfriend. He takes care of his chores at home. What more can I ask for?
Yeah, no kidding. Right? Is he going to go to college?
Yes.
Is he? What does he want to study?
Well, that's something that he doesn't know.
That's okay.
Right. I tell him, like, he's super smart, and that's a good and a bad thing, because he gets bored very easily. So the conversation that we had on that was like, just go. And even then, see, that's the other thing too, because I was like, hey, well, we can have you go to X school, blah. And he's like, Mom, like, I can get the millennial grant or scholarship. He's like, I can just go to like CSN or something local. Why spend all that money? And then once I have a major, then I'll transfer to the school that best is suited for that track. Again, I'm like, I'm thinking, okay, what Ivy League school do you want to go to? And he's like, no, he's so practical about it and just so content that, again, when I put my beliefs that I was brought up with, I'm like, this is not.
Is your son a Taurus?
No, he's an Aries.
Oh, okay. That was going to be my second guess, actually. That's funny, because I'm married to a Taurus, and he's very practical.
Yes.
And it's, that's been a little bit because, yeah, it's wonderful. We get along fantastic, but he's simple-minded. I don't know if that's a good thing, but he thinks things very differently, very practically. And that's a little bit of a struggle at the beginning, but now I respect that, because it's such a different approach. And I see my son being very like him, who is what's my sign? Aquarius. So the truth seeker, but he's very analytical. It's like the wheels are always turning. They're very practical in the way, hands-on. I love that. So we can learn a lot from our kids. I learn a lot from my son. He's 10. I learn to go on YouTube from him all the time for everything.
Yes.
Like, I'm like, why is this kid on YouTube all the time? And then, like, he'll learn these games, and then somebody will ask him for help, and I go, Eli, how many hours did it take you to master that skill? Do not give away your stuff for free anymore, my friend, because you're putting in the hard work.
Yes.
Putting in the hard work. And that's a whole nother thing I see in the coaching industry as well. I see all these coaches coming out, but from being experienced in the entrepreneurial journey, and I'm still looking for the right coach for me. I still have not found the right coach yet. I think that it'll just hit me like a ton of bricks one day. And I have a hard time with somebody that says they're a coach, but it's very obvious they haven't done the work. And that bothers me a lot. But when you were homeless for a year and came out and rose up out of that trying time, and then went to college, raised your children, now look at you now.
I know.
So that is the kind of coach that I would want to be with, somebody that has risen from the bottom of the pile, or however you want to call it, and just rose up and is stronger, because it makes you who you are.
Absolutely. And I don't, as I mentioned, like, that experience to me was one of the best ones that I ever had. And because it really made me realize what was important to me and where I wanted. And as a coach, as great as that experience was for me, I would hate for you to go through it. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
So it's like we can have those conversations, and it's like with those practical tools, and something that I do, I have that mixture. It's one of the things that I can't deny who I am, and I have the therapeutic background, and I also have the personal development, education and stuff. And you were talking about, like, you have anxiety. Well, you know what? Even if we're in a coaching relationship, if your anxiety comes up, because anxiety has become very mainstream. So some people can use it very lightly and just be like, oh, I'm just nervous. It may mean something like that. But I can also be like, okay, let me dig a little deeper. And is this really clinical anxiety? Is this something that maybe you need to address? And that's why it's important that the coaches do their work and do their homework and actually become, humble.
The product.
Yes, because we can do more damage than good sometimes. So again, it's like, if I identify you as being clinically anxiety, I'm not going to push you to your breaking point. I'm going to address what needs to get addressed so that we can overcome that. But I'm not going to be like, oh, you're just nervous. keep reading the book.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's where I can go both, ways. And so when we're having that relationship, and it's not therapy, it's just something that's already in me and who I am. I've embodied it.
Sure.
So it naturally comes out.
Yeah.
And so that I'll be like, hey, and even to the point where professionally speaking, that's something too that I come with the set of ethics from the counseling world. So if I have this conversation with anyone and I identify them as being clinically whatever, I will actually say, hey, you know what? This is not good for us. It's not good for you. Let me recommend you and refer you to somebody else. And have you address that and then meet me back, when you've been able to handle and break through that.
Yeah. You know what I think sometimes too? I think when people hire a coach, I think interesting. So I think sometimes when people hire a coach, that's what they want. They want that baby nurturing hand-holding thing. Especially, I'm thinking as myself for anxiety, say, I know I'm anxiety. I know my triggers are now. I've really learned to combat it, but I can see somebody who's anxious, they hire the coach because they think, oh, I have a coach, I will have no more anxiety, but they're still going to have it. It may lessen in the beginning, but when the real coaching begins, that's when it's going to rear its ugly head. Mm-hmm. Very interesting. I just thought about that. So it's because in a way, when somebody starts out with the coaching business, you are kind of coaching them. You're kind of getting them their mindset. You're trying to change their mindset, which brings on, for somebody who's anxiety, brings on anxiety. I'm in a training with one of the companies that I'm with, and it's like an intense training. Well, I started this training in December, and it involved I am statements, which I had no problem with, but the term mirror work, it gives me pangs now a little bit just saying the word, but it's not as bad. So as I was going through the coaching, I was like, you know what? I'm going to have to put this back on the back burner for just a little bit of time, because I know this mirror work piece, which is the self-development piece. If I'm not embracing that and doing that, then the coaching's not to be successful. So just recently, 2 weeks ago, I'm back in the coaching, and I do need to work on my mirror work, but it doesn't give me the butterflies in my tummy anymore. So it is true. Like if you go to see a coach and maybe you are getting those anxious feelings and all these other things, maybe it's time to go regroup mentally and then go back to the coach, and then the coach can take you where you want to go.
And I think that's really important that you would say that, because again, for me, through awareness comes change. If you're not aware of it, so you may
some don't want to be aware.
Right. But here's the thing, and that's where personal responsibility comes in.
Sure.
And this is also something that we talk about in the workshop. I think you are way more in integrity by saying, hey, you know what? I'm just not ready for that. Like, I know that's something that I should go through. That's a process that I should work on. There's something missing, but right now I'm not ready. And so now it becomes an empowered choice. So you are fully aware that there's something. So you just put it in, pin it in your little,
yeah.
And you shelve it and just like, okay, this is something that I need to do, but it's not a priority. And in taking responsibility and saying that empowers you. And you are now in control of it. And it's like, now it's on you. Versus you hiding from it and saying and running away and be like, no, making excuses. It's like, no, simply, I am not ready for this. The role of a coach, however, is, yes, push a little bit those boundaries, because it could be a way of avoiding, but it's also, we're honoring that as well. And so going back to knowing what the work is and knowing how to read people and be with people in such a way that you're going to be able to tell the difference and be like, okay, no, she's not avoiding it. It's just, this is something very real for her. So let's put this to the side. Let's move on to what's next and keep moving.
Yes. That's so, I love that. Wow. I love her. I love her. So one of the questions I've been kind of asking, I started with Elaine last week, and I'm going to ask you a question before we wrap up. So as an entrepreneur, I'm finding balance myself. Like, for example, at night, my little guy, we have our time between like 8 and 8:30. And it's a pretty amazing thing, actually, because that's our time just for me and him, and we just talk, or we usually snuggle, watch a video or whatever. He calls it snuggling. And now it's funny because even my best friend, when she'll go to call me at like 8:20, she's like the other day she called me. She knew I was with him because the phone was out here. I don't ever have the phone with me. And be present too. I think that's a really good point to bring up right now. Like the phone's not in the room. I don't look at the phone. It's about him. And she goes, oh, call me when the bedtime routine's over. So she knows. So I set that boundary with him. But it's one of the ways that I balance, because it's a lot of guilt. A lot of guilt as an entrepreneur. But there's an event Wednesday night. I already know Wednesday night I got to tell my son, mommy may not be home to snuggle with you. But he always waits up, though. That's so funny. He always waits up. So what are some of the ways that you balance the mom, the entrepreneur life?
Actually, again, there's no direct answer. I work with harmony versus balance. To me, balance is too rigid.
Oh, interesting.
And notice how one thing always goes down when, you know what I mean? It's just like that scale is always tipping. So finding the harmony in your life. And because things are not always 50-50. Things are not always going to be like, oh, let me be 10% mom, 20% wife, 80% entrepreneur. That doesn't work.
Mm-mm.
And so finding that fluidity between all of my beingness, right? So it's like being mom, you know, there's times where, yeah, like I'm fully present and I'm here. Yesterday, Mother's Day, it was all about them and didn't really even look at my phone. And it was great. And it was awesome. And we were, you know, connected. Today, I'm back at work.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? And that's how it goes. And so it's like I'm present every moment.
That's so important to live in the now.
Mm-hmm.
That's really important. Yeah, that's really, really important, actually.
You know, I plan for the future. I'm not worried about it, you know? So again, like I mentioned, my son's going to be graduating. So I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, do I have all the graduation, you know, things set up and everything else? So the mom in me is still back here, but right now I'm here with you.
Yeah.
And I'm present to you. And so mom doesn't disappear.
Mm-mm. We're always mom.
Yeah. So it's like entrepreneur doesn't disappear. You know, it's just embodying all of it and being fluid and just allowing things to happen moment to moment.
So what would be your best advice for someone that does want to come to your workshop and maybe they don't have quite the support yet? Because I know what that was like in the beginning for me. I didn't always have the support at the beginning because they think we're crazy. You know, you have a master's degree, for crying out loud. What are you doing becoming an entrepreneur? What is your advice to somebody that maybe is watching right now that maybe wants to go to this workshop, but they don't have the support at home to get them to the workshop?
I think it really is like you taking that step. Just go for it and believe in yourself enough, you know, and do it. You know, it's like, have you ever felt like this is something you need to do? And I'm not even, you know, of course, yes, everybody come to the workshop. But at the same time, if that's not in your lane right now, you know, but just keep moving and directing your, you know, just move forward into what it is that you want to be and have it be your choice.
Yeah.
You know, because yeah, it's the support almost comes later.
It absolutely does.
Right? So it's like, you got to be willing to take that plunge and others will follow.
Yeah, and you've got to be happy with yourself.
Yes.
Truly happy. I mean, that is the thing. Like for the first time in my life, I am truly happy with myself. Mm-hmm. And that's it. That's tough. And that I do owe it to one of my friends who is about 82. And she said to me one day, she said, Erin, forgive yourself. And man, that really struck me hard, those couple words, because it's true. You have to forgive yourself sometimes. Right. So Angie does many, many things. So she got life-changing solutions, but tell them how to, we'll post the link for the workshop, but tell them about what you're doing on WCOBM. Is that what it is?
Yes, it's the WCOBM network. I have a show every other Tuesday. So it's every second and fourth Tuesday at 10 a.m. It comes on live. And then later on my Facebook page, Life Changing Solutions, I release the recordings. Something else that I do, and I think we spoke of, or we didn't actually, not on air anyway. I also do a lot of contract work where I'm supporting other people in designing their workshops or creating curriculums. I've been traveling because everybody's like, well, I used to have, again, the office, the counseling center and everything else. And now I let go of all that, which allowed me the freedom to be able to travel. I've traveled all over the US. I've gone to Mexico and, done some public speaking events, done some workshops down there. And so I'm everywhere. So the best way to find me really is through the Facebook page, and, see how we can support one another and just.
I love it. It's amazing. In this town we meet so many amazing entrepreneurs. I cannot believe we've never crossed paths. I still can't believe that. And then we find each other on Facebook. We had 200 and some odd friends that were mutual. And I was like, no, actually we only have 46, I think, which surprised me.
Yes.
Because usually it's in the few hundred. I was like, wow, we only have 46 mutual friends.
Right.
But it's funny, but you just got to keep on going out there, keep on networking. Good piece of advice a friend of mine gave me Saturday. We talked on the phone Saturday, and she says, Ann, if you make the most money in the room, you're in the wrong room. So just keep on going higher and find that group and find that support and find those people that are willing to support you.
Mm-hmm.
Together, the tribe is being built in all my world around me. And I know between the ones that are in my life now, I know that we can just take it to the next level, which is amazing.
And it's something that I'm really excited about, because to be honest, in my previous experiences, and that's why I think I've shied away too, is women were not easy to work with. They were extremely competitive.
Yeah, we are our worst enemies.
Yes.
Which is so sad.
It really is. And then, honestly, when I came to the meeting, the Chicks Connect meeting, everybody was so warm and inviting, and it's just genuinely interested.
Yeah.
Into what each one of us was about. And that's where I was like, I need to really look more into this, because it was, and I really appreciate the genuineness, and authenticity of the group and the care, and everybody was just filled with different suggestions and just wanting to support. And it didn't even matter if we were technically competing in competitive industries or what have you. It's just so it's really a big.
Well, there's 7 billion people on the planet. I mean, it's about building relationships at the end of the day, first and foremost, Right. So absolutely. And I think there's a big, lots of waffling right now in the networking arena, but I think our group is going to be amazing because it is about empowering, and it's about loving each other. And there's no drama. I mean, we already raised our children. You're raising children. So I'm still raising one, and enough is enough. So I want to encourage you to definitely reach out to Angie and look up her Facebook group, Life Changing Solutions. It's in our feed, and we will also post a link for the workshop. And I want to thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you, Las Vegas. We love Las Vegas. Have a great day. The weather is a little bit cooler today, thank goodness. So everybody had an amazing day. Thank you. And we went 40 minutes.